We're going to look at Federalist 44, Part 1. Remember, Madison started looking at the categories that authority has been given to the federal government. And now we are at the fifth category. However, here he's talking about things that have been taken away from state governments, things that state governments should not meddle in, should not mess around with. And that's the fifth category. And look, as I've written here, restraint of the states from certain injurious acts. What he means by that is, I have mentioned this before, Madison, in one of the memorandums, Vices of the Political System of the United States, he'd complained about the mutability of laws. In other words, laws changing quickly in the states, and especially to the advantage of the, let's say, a majority faction that wanted laws to change to their advantage. Not what was best for society in the long run, but what was best for them at that time. So they would elect legislators to legislature, and they would pass laws that the majority wanted, even though it was not good for the whole community in the long term. One of these major problems was what they called passing of paper money acts, which was states would print up money and pretty soon it become worthless, and the only reason they would print the paper money is because legislators would be elected by debtors, and debtors wanted to pay their debts at a depreciated value. And this was to the disadvantage of the creditors. And this might make the situation extremely difficult, because Madison was saying, well, if we lose credibility, if government loses credibility with people, with creditors, then we will be in a really, really bad situation later on. And see here, passing laws impairing the obligation of contracts. We'll be reading that here in a little bit. That's what the slate legislatures were doing. And these slate legislatures were being elected by debtors, and the legislature would pass what they call stay laws. That would be, they would not force the debtors to pay their debt on time. They would give them a stay, an extended time. And of course, I told you about printing paper money, which would become worthless after a while, and states would say, well, you creditors have to take this money whether you like it or not. So this was being extremely unfair to the creditors. And the sixth category that Madison is going to talk about is going to be provisions for giving efficacy to these powers. In other words, if you've given government the responsibility of taking care of something, of enforcing laws, you have to give it the necessary means to do it. And you need necessary and proper means of doing it. So in the Constitution, there's a clause which says whatever is necessary and proper, Congress can pass a law and make it official. To this, a lot of people were criticizing the Federalists for this. And as you can see here, Madison says whenever a general power to do a thing is given, every particular power necessary for doing it is included. He says this should be easy to understand. You ask a government to do something, and if you don't allow it to do, the government becomes a joke. People will lose faith and trust in it. And then we will be just like the kingdoms and monarchies in Europe, where people have no trust in the king or whoever who ruled them. They are forced to obey orders. They don't want to do it from bottom of their heart. So keep in mind the fifth category, which is not allowing the states to do certain things, especially passing laws impairing obligations of contract, and also provisions for giving efficacy to these powers, necessary and proper. It says it off of the necessary and proper clause. And another one is the Supremacy Clause, which says the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. We'll start reading this, and here in the next video, and I hope you will be reading along with me.